Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. So what I thought I would do in this one is I would go through and I would rank or put into a single-use tier list every single book I have read this year so far. So I'm going to literally tell you which are my most favourite books of this year and which were my least favourite books of the year. So if I've done this right, because I've never done it before, I've never even edited it yet, so this may not turn out properly. This should all end up being a nice little video where you can see what my favourite books were and what my least favourite books were. So I'm recording my laptop at the moment. I've uploaded every book or a picture of every book I've read so far this year, and I'm going to quickly, well, probably going to take me about an hour, but I'm going to throw these into the tiers I think they belong in. I'm not even sure what order these have been placed in. I think literally just the file name of the photo. So that's the order I'm going to do them in. So let's get started right now. Okay, so let's get started. So you can see the list of all of the books here. The first book is one of my most recent ones actually, which was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So this was a fantastic book. I don't think it's one of my favourite books of the year, so we're going to throw this into an A. This could all end up getting thrown into the market, or thrown into the air. I may find out that there are books that I think are A, therefore that pushes And Then There Were None up or down or whatever. And also, I can't remember what I rated some of these, so this may not reflect what I have on my Goodreads or on my story graph. So this is how I feel about these books at this time, and not when I read them. Gin's Apple, that's probably one of my least favourite reads of the year. Didn't find it fun at all. The Girls Who Disappeared by Claire Douglas, that was a solid read. I really liked that one, excuse me. It may end up being an A tier, as I said. Depends what else goes into the S tier. Speaking of S tier, one day, I can quite solidly say this is probably going to still be up here at the end of this video. Utterly fantastic book. Literally never heard of David Nichols up until I started reading one day and thought it was absolutely fantastic. So I think that's definitely going to be staying up there. A solid foundation for what's going to be essentially the best books I've read so far this year. So Golden Sun is the other book in the next book on this list. I think Golden Sun I'm going to stick in B purely because of the disappointment I found with that. Red Rising, which is in this list as well, I really enjoyed the ending of. There was some kind of slow moments in the middle. I think the start was great, the middle was quite dull, and the ending of Red Rising was fantastic. People have told me Golden Sun was a lot better. They said Golden Sun is everything that the ending of Red Rising is, but for basically the whole book, and then the ending's fantastic as well. And I felt like Golden Sun was a massive letdown. I felt like there was loads of things that they could have done that they didn't do. I felt like a lot of it was kind of political. I felt like a lot of it was people talking about how bad the world is, and I'm just not bothered about that. So that's down in B at the moment. It may move up, it may move down, depending on what else we've got. The next book that's going into my S tier list is The List of Suspicious Things by Jenny Godfrey. This was phenomenal. Really fantastic book. One of the best books, as I said, I've read this year. I've just done some videos both on my TikTok and on my YouTube that this book will feature in my kind of top 10 best books of the year list at the end of the year. I can tell you that now. It's about a young girl called Miv, set in 1979, when the Yorkshire Ripper was at its hype, and it essentially tells her story as her coming of age. And she uses these lists, which are the lists of suspicious things, to work out what suspicious things might have caused the Yorkshire Ripper. I've not explained this very well, but she's going to try and find out who the Yorkshire Ripper is, and she writes loads of lists of people, of places, to try and work out who it is. She doesn't end up working out who is the Yorkshire Ripper, not a plot twist, because realistically, was she ever going to? No, the police did, or I think he was got for fraud or something, or pulled over. But what she does find is she finds some people in her town who aren't as nice as I think people thought they were, and using these lists, she finds that out. I've explained that poorly, but you get what I mean. Really good book, fascinating, heartbreaking moment at the end. Yeah. The Maid by Nita Prose is my next one. I think this is going to go into B. I wasn't a big fan. It's either B or C. I think it's probably C. If the Girls Who Disappeared I was a big fan of, actually. That may move up into an A the more I think about it. The Maid wasn't the worst book I've read, but I heard a lot of praise about it. I heard people say it was fantastic. I loved the main character of Nadine. She clearly has some sort of autism or social disorder, this sort of thing. Struggles with social cues. Essentially, a murder happens in the hotel at which she works. She then gets embroiled in it because she found the person that was murdered, and there's suspicion that she was the murderer. And you start to think, could she have been? Is she that kind of not mentally aware? But some other things that end up unfurling. And unfortunately, the kind of mystery element of it wasn't particularly interesting. Nadine was good. The characters she meets, the heartwarming elements of that were fantastic, but other than that, I don't think it was that great. So that's a C for me now. We'll see how it goes on. Eleanor Oliphant, I think is an A, could have been an S tier, I don't know. I really, really love the character. Similar to the maid in that Eleanor Oliphant herself is quite a interesting character. She's still got, she still clearly misses social cues. She struggles with interacting with people, and I think there's an element of this where you are learning about the different ways that autism can affect people. Now, I did recently receive a DM on Instagram of somebody who said that she works with autistic children, children with special educational needs, and said that these books don't really represent it very well. And that's a very, very fair point to make. I think it does still benefit the market, the book market, by having these stories about people that don't get these social cues, because it normalizes it. It makes you feel, as a person, more comfortable with that element. So that's my thoughts anyway. So Eleanor Oliphant, loved it. Great, heartwarming, quite some dark elements to it, which I think were mature and very impressive of Gail Honeyman to have included in the books. So yeah, that's A in my list. Then we have White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Now, this is an A or a B for me. I think the book itself is an A. I think the depiction of love that Fyodor Dostoevsky manages to get into this. By the way, I had been writing his name without a Y in like everything that I wrote about him, and I realized there's a Y in Dostoevsky. I thought I was being clever in presuming that Russians don't have Ys. Don't know why. Stupid. Anyway, it's about a man who meets a woman, falls in love, doesn't all to end up being how he wants it to be. It's a novella. It's literally 90 pages. I think it literally, if you counted up everything, it took me about 90 minutes to 2 hours to read. I'm not the quickest reader, so it's not going to take me that short amount of time, but really, really short. And I think the most impressive thing that was done here is Fyodor Dostoevsky's ability to write this romance and this love story in such a clinical, short space amount of time. And that, I think, is what impressed me most with this story. So I'm going to stick that in A, and we'll see if it stays in A. Hell and Death is really interesting because this is a book I read at the very start of the year. I was impressed with it. There was an interesting twist to it at the end. I think I'm going to stick it into a B. It's essentially a very Agatha Christie-esque book. It feels quite a bit like And Then There Were None. A group of people go to a house, they get locked in this house. One of them ends up getting murdered. It has to be somebody that's in that house. Who is it? That's essentially the idea here. They're all very middle class. I think Oscar Jensen does a great job of making you, as the reader, feel quite middle class and upper class by talking about these, I don't know, going to these posh schools and doing these posh activities as children. Normalizing that makes it feel quite interesting. But I think the twist at the end, I think, is done just well enough that it doesn't feel like a cop-out to me. I think sometimes twists or the roundup of all books within the crime mystery can feel sometimes like the author never knew where they were going and kind of just ties things up at the end neatly, but not in a satisfying way. Much prefer a mystery and a crime where it does feel like they knew what they wanted to do at the end and then they worked their way there. Hell and Death, I think Oscar Jensen manages to just pull that off just well enough. Girl Interrupted, I didn't get that at all, didn't enjoy it. Not my flavour of book. I don't really want to talk much more about it because realistically, I listened to the whole book. I got to the end and I thought I didn't really get any of that. None of it went in. So I gave it a very average review. It's probably a book I need to reread. Maybe sit down and actually read it. The Whalebone Theatre, straight up to S tier. One of the best books I've read this year, as you'll know if you've seen any of my other videos. Really, really good book. Really impressed by this. Joanna Quinn is a fantastic writer. Her debut novel. She's really brave with some of the things she does in here. Covers the story of a young girl who grows up and then she has siblings and they grow up and it talks about their lives. The Whalebone Theatre itself is based on a whale carcass they find on the beach as children. They want to claim it as their own so they can hold these plays within the carcass, which is the theatre. So really, really interesting book. Loved it. Big, big fan of that. Slow Horses, I'm going to throw into a B. I think the sequels would be better. The Mick Herron's writing was quite jarring at the start. It was really passive, really not engaging. And then I started to realise there was actually a layer of humour in there, and that really brought me into the book. Really started to enjoy it. I watched the TV series as well, which I don't think I've finished yet actually, and I enjoyed that, and that helped me actually read the book quicker because it kind of helped me understand the tone that Mick Herron was going for. Not going to try and describe all of these books because this series could go on for, or this video could go on forever. But essentially about a group of people called Slow Horses who aren't good enough for the MI5. They've failed in the MI5 somehow, and so they end up going to this area called Slough House, and they're called slow horses. The book then talks about a young British Asian boy is taken hostage live on social media or online, and it's then their job, and they're like, why is it our job? Surely this should be MI5, and that's the interesting element. Red Rising, I'm going to throw in there with Golden Sun because I gave it, I think, a 4.25 on my blog, expecting Golden Sun to be better. Therefore, I was going to be giving Golden Sun a 4.5 or something, but Golden Sun I gave a 4.25 in the same sense. Two good books, two good sci-fi books. I don't know if they get better. I do kind of want to read the third book because I've heard the series as a whole is great. So we'll see how that goes. So far, those two would be a B here, I think, on this list. Battlefield Earth. Now, I just want to state that when I was asked to read this, there's like a 40-year edition that the publishers of the book asked me to listen to. They had the audiobook done, and it's like full cast, loads of music, loads of different characters, and it was like 40 hours long or something obscene like this. So listen to that over the space of, I think, 6 weeks or something, from like start December through to mid-January. Finished it. Thought it was a fantastic audiobook, thought it was an incredible kind of sci-fi experience. There was a lot of jumping around. The characters were quite interesting, but I didn't know that this guy invented Scientology when I read that, and I promise you that I did not know that when I was found that out. And not until I started posting my review did people start saying to me, oh, by the way, you do know that he did that. He invented that, and that's controversial. But anyway. The City We Became, wasn't a big fan, didn't enjoy it. Thought N.K. Jemisin was going to be one of these authors that I thought all of her books were great. I've only read one other, which is, what's it called? The other series she's done, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll stick a picture of it here so you can have a look at that. But yeah, really, really interesting idea and premise. There's basically avatars that control different versions of cities that we all know around the world. This one focuses on the New York provinces and boroughs, I think they're called in America. And then I don't really know what the story was, because the story was just kind of them all meeting each other. Then there was kind of a villain, but they weren't that interesting. And then the book kind of ended, and I was like, I don't know what happened there. And what it was quite interesting is I wasn't that big of a fan of it. I'd seen some great things online, but then I went to go have a look on Goodreads. It doesn't have a great Goodreads rating either, so I'm glad I'm not alone in that sense. When Your Family Says No, I think this is either a B or an A. This is a memoir about a woman who grew up in an ultra-Orthodox family and then essentially leaves it after she... Sorry, my Airwick's just kicking off. After she falls in love with another man who's not only not Jewish, but his family don't approve of him at all. He's lovely, he's very kind, and anybody else would be well happy with him, but because he's not Jewish, the family don't approve of him, and it's her story of essentially leaving that religion, or leaving the ultra-Orthodox element of the religion, but her maturity and her understanding of what religion can do and how it can benefit you, but also the darkness and how it can control people and make them act in a way that if you're also part of that religion, they don't act. If you see what I mean, if I've described that well enough. Battle Song by Ian Ross, solid book, don't think it blew my mind, great historical fiction, a book I was asked to review, so I gave an honest review. I said I always give honest reviews, about a young, I think it's like a squire, who then works his way up to being a knight, and it's kind of his story as he goes through that journey. Quite interesting. I love historical fiction, I love knights, didn't blow me away. There are some really nice characters in it though. There's kind of like this fatherhood or father character in it who is quite inspiring. There's The Housemaid's Secret on here. So that's a fantastic book as well. I'm going to put that within A. I know that's quite high for a book like The Housemaid's Secret, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Freida McFadden is one of the best voices in thrillers. I think she's nailed what I want in a thriller. A main character who I genuinely care about, a story that's easy to follow, and I want to accent the word easy, there's nothing complicated in here, and then a twist that is always going to get me, and that's all I want. And I want for that twist to make sense. I don't want it to be a twist where they're like, you the reader are the killer or some stupid like that. I don't want that. I want a story where when I read the twist, I'm like, whoa, wait, what? And then have to read it again, I'm like, that's amazing. And Freida McFadden with both The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret, which I've read so far, did that. So that's why The Housemaid's Secret's on there. It's the sequel to The Housemaid, but you could 100% read this without even having read the first, really. Of Darkness and Light by Ryan Cahill, I think is an A-class fantasy book. I think it's brilliant. I think Ryan Cahill is a breath of fresh air in the fantasy genre. You're always looking for new people who are dedicated fantasy writers, and Ryan Cahill right now, I think, is some kind of like prodigy to Bryan Sanderson. The rate at which he writes, his ability to write genuinely fascinating books that filled with deep worlds, filled with genuinely interesting characters, but in a way that's easy to understand. Is very Brandon Sanderson-esque as well. There's not a lot of ye olde language, characters speak naturally, this sort of thing. I think it's hard to do in fantasy, and I think Ryan Cahill is doing a brilliant job. I think it might be Cahill, apologies if it is Cahill. A Gentleman in Moscow, I'm going to put into the S tier, and I think this is even controversial for me. I think A Gentleman in Moscow by Immortals is in the S tier here because it really, really blew me away. I was expecting some sort of political thriller. I was expecting something to be quite, I don't know, about a man who was a political figure who was traveling around Moscow doing things that, I don't know, I would have to pretend to be quite interesting. What instead I got is a story about a man who's essentially stuck in the Metropole Hotel. He's set on kind of a house arrest for the rest of his life. He then has to only interact with people in the hotel. He can get his hair cut, he can do other things like this, but generally every experience he has is a story in this hotel. He meets young people, he meets old people, fascinating people, dull people. He has journeys with people in terms of he meets them in 1 year and then ends up meeting them 20 years later in the same hotel. It's really, really fascinating. And the Count, who is the main character himself, is adorable. He really, really is utterly adorable. He is kind. He focuses on being a gentleman, which is the gentleman element. So he knows about class. He knows what a gentleman should do, which is kind of like a fine line between what upper class, middle class, lower class, that sort of thing. But he never treats anybody below his station, no matter what they do in the hotel, whether they're a cleaner or whether the owner of the hotel, he treats them the exact same. He says thank you, he respects them. It's really, really nice to read. There's actually a TV series of this coming out, I believe, like soon, in the next few days. I'm filming this on when am I filming this? The 20th of March, and I think it comes out, I don't know, in a couple of weeks or something like that. Sorry, my cat is meowing. She wants to go out. Not long now, Nala. We'll be there shortly. So there's 2 more books. The Night of the Moon, I'm going to stick into the D class. I didn't think it was great at all. I thought it was really disappointing. It's a novella. Actually, I'm going to stick it in C because I think D is a little harsh. By Gregory Contaxis. I think I've read his other book, which is, if I can find it on there, The Return of the Night, which was very good. That's a full-length novel. The Night of the Moon is a novella. I think it started off too slowly, tried to squeeze too much into the story, and tried to squeeze too much kind of character development in a short amount of time, and I just couldn't engage with it. It then ended quite quickly, and therefore I came out of it not really caring. So that was a bit of a shame from Gregory Contaxis. And then River East, River West, I'm going to put into A as well. I thought it was fantastic. This essentially tells the story of 2 different people in China during, I believe, like the 80s and then the noughties, and they do end up their stories end up syncing up with one another, but it tells of their kind of different experiences growing up in China, both, as I said, in the 80s and in the noughties, and both their kind of admiration of America and how America influenced Chinese culture in the time, how everybody kind of saw these, I don't know, these colleges and these malls and these clothes and these interesting things going on in America, and how China was kind of trying to replicate that, and how it almost became like a fandom over in China for this sort of thing. There's my tier list. I think I'm happy with that. I think that's how I would actually still rate all of them. I think I'm now going to try and put them into the order in which they would go in here. So I think that's all okay. I think Eleanor Oliphant I would put above Then There Were None. I don't think I can. There I can. I think River East, River West I would put here at the start of A. I think White Nights would probably be at the end because I think it's good, but I don't think it's great. Girls Who Disappeared was fantastic. That's about, it's like a thriller novel. I think this has to jump up more. I would say Red Rising becomes before Golden Sun just because of how let down I was by Golden Sun. I think Slow Horses was better than that. And then the rest I think are fine. I think The Maid was better than Night of the Moon. I think The Jin's Apple, I think it would probably have to go like this. I think The City We Became is a better book than The Jin's Apple. I think The Girl Interrupted was my least favourite book of the year so far. Now, if you're an author of any of these books, I am sorry, unless you're at the top, I am sorry. I'm not saying you're a bad writer. I'm not saying your book is universally bad. This is my opinion. This is what I felt coming out of reading the book. You've got to remember, everyone has different interests when it comes to reading your book. Everybody's book who gets published was good enough to get published, so your book is good enough. just in my opinion, when it came to how I felt after finishing reading it, or how I feel on the 20th of March, or whatever I said it is today, about this book, it's not quite how I would have enjoyed it or not. On the other hand, if you're at the very top of this list, congratulations, your book's one of my favourite books I've read of the year so far. And this kind of S tier along the top here will possibly fill out with 6 more books over the next few weeks. And it will end up being, my cats are jumping around whilst I'm doing this. As soon as I start recording a video, they're like, oh, let's play and run around. One of them's literally hanging off my bedding, which is hung over my banister right now. Fantastic. Please don't kill yourself, cat. I'm gonna have to go get her in a second. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed watching this video, watching me tier all of my books. You've probably skipped through bits, skipped to the book you like the most, seen where I've put it, that sort of thing. Let me know down in the comments below which of these books you've read, which of these books you disagree with where I've put them, which of these books you agree with where I put them. And don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.